First of all, Easterby was with the Chiefs, and he went to the Patriots, and he worked with the Patriots for 6 years as a character coach. And what that meant was he was an advisor for players. If players had a problem, they could talk to him about it. Bill Belichick trusted him enough. He wanted to know his opinion about players, not as a personnel expert, but as a people expert. And he was there for 6 years, and I think he got 2 Super Bowl rings, and everything worked out well. And then his contract was up, and reportedly, several teams were interested. The Texans had Bill O'Brien as the head coach, who had come from the Patriots, working with Bill Belichick, not Jack Easterby. But Belichick recommended him to O'Brien. O'Brien got him hired as a senior vice president of team development. And that season of 2019, the Texans went 10-6, won the division for the fourth time in 5 years. And we didn't hear much about Easterby, even though O'Brien praised him a lot and how much he appreciated his input and his counsel. And then the next off season, after the 2019 season, when they beat Buffalo in the playoffs and then blew that 24-year-old lead to Kansas City in divisional round, O'Brien got the official GM title, even though he'd been performing the duties for a year. And then Easterby got a promotion to senior executive vice president of football operations. And last season, in that season, O'Brien talked to us a lot about how closely he and Easterby worked, that they made joint decisions. Well, that wasn't true, because nobody told Bill O'Brien what to do, because he had control of all personnel and coaching decisions. But still, he told everybody what a great job Easterby did and how they worked closely together, and people didn't think much about it. And then when they started so badly, and then when he got fired at 0-4, they made Easterby the interim GM, and then Romeo Crennel the interim head coach. And so people started to blast the Texans owner, Cal McNair, because he didn't fire Easterby along with O'Brien. Everybody wanted both of them gone at the same time. Well, Easterby was the right guy to be the interim GM. There was no complaint about him then. But they were terrible, and people don't like anything associated with New England, because they think of Bill O'Brien. They wanted Bill gone. He was a subject of so much criticism. And now they've got Easterby back. And not only has Easterby got in really tightly with the owner, Cal McNair, the GM, Nick Caserio, who came from the Patriots, and they're good friends. They worked together for 6 years. They became friends. Now they're working closely together. Caserio has in his contract, like O'Brien, he has final say on everything. But Easterby's right there on anything involving football operations, including personnel, even though he's not a personnel expert. And so people don't like him. They want him fired. Some of the players don't like that he's involved in personnel. That really he's involved. He's got his fingerprints in every part of the organization. But when you got the owner on your side, that's the only one you need. Now he's got the GM on his side as well. And a lot of people think if they fired him, that Watson would play. I don't know if it's true. We have not heard from Watson. We've only heard from sources close to Watson, leaking information in national media like at ESPN and NFL Network. And until we actually hear from Deshaun Watson about we know what he wants, but why he wants it, and if there's a chance it could be worked out. And the thing is, the new coach, David Culley, I feel terrible for him. New defensive coordinator, Lovie Smith, all their coaches, they came here hoping that Watson will change his mind. At some point, Culley, offensive coordinator Tim Kelly, who Watson loves and wanted back, quarterback coach Pep Hamilton, one of the best in the league, coming off a tremendous job with Justin Herbert with the Chargers. And then Josh McCown, their third quarterback, we think he'll be the assistant quarterback's coach, and Watson loves him too. So everything is set up to try to make Watson happy, but at some point you need to meet with him, and so far they haven't been able to communicate with him.
That David Show right now, I have on John McClain with me. You can always check him out. His writers in the Houston Chronicle. Follow him at McClain_on_the NFL. So real quick before I shift to Deshaun, as far as Easterly, would you say that he's being scapegoated then? Because if you just pointed out, they had success in listen, I'm in Chicago, so I don't have – as far as with the Bears, there's no consistency when it comes to winning. And we kind of have someone, even I would say, can kind of compare to how you said with Easterly, we have Ted Phillips, who is actually the president, even though he's not supposed to have anything to do with the football operations side. But he's someone that people have been called on, have called for him to be fired, but he's been part of the organization since the 80s. But as far as Easterby, are you kind of saying that it's more of the situation that this year went south and people are blaming him, but overall, perhaps he doesn't deserve some of the ire that he's getting from the fan base?
Well, he hasn't been scapegoated, and he had nothing to do with what happened on the field. They had Watson play great. They had no running game, 31st in rushing, 32nd against the run, second worst running team in team history, worst in team history, stopped in the run. No offensive lineman played as well as he played in 2019. Easterby didn't have anything to do with that, but there's some people who have been fired. There's some people that he's telling what to do behind the scenes that don't think he should be. So that's why people are so unhappy and want him fired, but he's not going anywhere. I don't think he's had any kind of impact on what happens on the field, but he's having an impact on what's happening off the field. But people are hoping that Caserio, with 6 Super Bowl rings and being with the Patriots for 20 years and being long overdue to be a GM, that he has that control for the first time in his career. They're hoping he knows what he's doing.
Now, where did, and again, you pointed out, so I'm asking for your opinion, but where did the relationship perhaps between Bill O'Brien and Deshaun Watson, if it did, start to dissolve? And is that really, would you place a lot of what's going on with Deshaun beginning with Bill O'Brien and then to Cal McNair, or is it solely, do you find it to Cal McNair?
Yeah, there's nothing to do with O'Brien. Watson praised O'Brien all the time. Every time there'd be talk about O'Brien being fired, he would come to his defense. Deshaun Watson's a great guy. Yeah, we asked him about Eric Bieniemy near the end of the year. He praised the heck out of him, even though he admitted he never met him, only to shake hands after a game. I asked him about Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, who he talked to after the second time they played. He praised him. Even when we were doing a story on Jack Easterby, he praised him. So it's not in Watson's nature to be negative. That's one reason people are so shocked here, because it's just so un-Deshaun Watson-like. We could understand James Harden scorching the earth on his exit, because that's James. James came in late, out of shape, didn't play well, didn't play hard, and then ripped the team, and he got what he wanted going to Brooklyn. I don't see Watson doing that. That's just not his personality. He's such a good guy, and he's respected by everybody. Everybody in the organization loves him. People cover him, love him. Fans love him. His teammates do, and that's why they're adamant that they're not going to trade him, because they're holding all the cards, considering he's under a $156 million contract through 2025.
That David Show here with John McClain. Follow him at McClain_on_the NFL. Listen, you brought up Deshaun's character, and that's somewhat not as much as usually. And being a brother, not as usually how brothers get hit. But you have, for instance, Dick Vermeil and Brett Favre. Dick Vermeil came out and questioned his character, and Brett Favre basically told him to shut up and play. Is that starting to be the consensus with the fan base, or has what Deshaun Watson has done up to this point been too much for this incident to totally harm what people view as him being a good person in general?
I run every Friday a mailbag, and I run 200 inches of fans. And 90% of them are blasting Cal McNair and Jack Easterby. And there's about 10% that are ripping Watson. And I think those are probably people, based on what they say, who own businesses or who are general managers, that say you are paid to play, not to make decisions. And I tell people, I get that on my talk shows. I said, times have changed. What the NFL does not want to be like the NBA, where a couple of agents and a couple of players control so much. The NFL is run by the owners, baseball is run by the union, and the NBA is run by the players. And agents. And so the NFL doesn't want that. And there's nobody can question Watson's integrity. For whatever reason, he wants to be traded. But until he says so, I know it's true, but until he says what the reasons are, I'm going to be baffled. I want to hear it from him. I don't want to hear it leaked from anonymous sources close to him.
So look, speaking of anonymous sources, and I'm sure with your connection to the Chronicle and radio, I mean, again, I'm not asking you to tell, I don't want you to say something that's false or hasn't been corroborated, but still just your feeling. Because when you start to hear that the fracture between Cal McNair and Deshaun Watson, you ask yourself, what could it be from a player to just sign his contract? Even though, to be honest with you, in the NFL, you have to get the guarantee money when the guarantee money is offered regardless. Like you have to. But is this from a broken promise of a player wanting to have more input? Or is this because the franchise is dysfunctional? Or has there been something disrespectful, and me being black on a racial side, has that been inferred when it comes to Watson and Cal McNair at all?
I haven't heard anybody say anything racial. I mean, the Texans. Well, I'm not even gonna go there because it's anybody knows anything about the Texans and who they've employed through the years, including Watson as the quarterback, 156 million. No, Watson's never said anything about that. We run pictures in the Chronicle of them hugging, shaking hands after games. Watson cried when he got his contract, and everybody was so happy for him. Here's all I think I know. Watson told us with about 3 weeks left in the season that he had talked to Cal McNair about what kind of head coach they're going to hire. Were they looking offense, defense? He said, we're looking for the best one. We got to get a general manager. The general manager is going to oversee that search, and he'll make the decision, and then Cal McNair will sign off on it. And then Watson told us a couple of times he had been in contact with McNair about some couple of coaches he'd like to see interviewed. And when we interviewed him on our last Zoom, I asked him a couple of questions about the GM, and he never said anything about the GM. It was all about the coach. And we ran names by him, like Eric Bieniemy, Matt Eberflus, Arthur Smith, some others. And he doesn't know those guys personally. He had Robert Saleh on his list, even though he doesn't know Robert Saleh, because he's heard good things about him. And so the first negative thing we heard was when Nick Caserio was named GM, Watson put out a tweet that he deleted. It said, some things never change. And we thought that meant going back to the New England well, so to speak. But we don't know. And then shortly after that, a source close to Watson told ESPN that he was upset he had to learn about the GM on social media. Mm-hmm. So the GM thought that it was all about the coach, like we all did, and he sent an apology for the miscommunication. You know, usually somebody apologizes, that's good. Usually you talk about it. But so I can't imagine Deshaun Watson would put himself in a position to be forced to retire, which he's not going to do, or lose millions and millions of dollars because he found out about Nick Caserio on social media, which a GM hire you'd think he'd be fired up about, and he might be. And I think if he met David Culley, he'd be fired up about Culley. Culley has really, really impressed people since he got this job. But you got to sit down and do one-on-one communication, and so far, Watson hasn't agreed to do that. But as far as what's going on, I'm sure Jack Easterby's got a lot to do with it, considering what Watson said at the end of the year without naming him. People think they got a lot more power around here than they do. Andre Johnson's tweet about Jack Easterby, nothing good happened in the organization since he walked through the door, which is kind of unfair because the first year they did win the division and a playoff game, but they bombed out last year. And so I don't know I just don't know. If I didn't know, I would say it, but I don't know exactly what the issues are with Watson.